My name is David Ulbrich, and this is September 8th, 2007. What is your full name, sir?
Byfield D. Gordon,
And when and where were you born, sir?
Guthrie, Oklahoma, in July the 15th, 1920.
Which squadron were you in?
I was in the 513th.
And when did you join the U.S. military?
Well, I joined the National Guard, Oklahoma National Guard, 45th Infantry Division, May of 1940.
So you volunteered. You were not drafted.
I was not drafted. We were activated in September 16th, 1940. Went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
And how did you find your way into the Air Corps?
Well, I was in a field artillery headquarter battery, 189th Field Artillery, and we would go out into the field for training and roll around in the dirt, and I'd see these aircraft flying over, and I wanted to get in there. And they finally dropped the requirements to high school. I had a year and a half of college. It had been 2 years. And when they dropped it to high school, by this time I was at Abilene, Texas. And I went downtown to Abilene and put in my application for aviation cadets and passed all my tests, and I got in and started training in early 42, graduated January 14th, 1943. Second lieutenant with pilot.
Say January the 15th, 1943?
14th.
14th, 1943. You have a very good memory. What was your training like? What was pilot training like? Can you give me some stories about?
Well, everybody in that was graduating at Lubbock, most of them wanted to be fighter pilots. I wanted as many engines as I could get, and I asked for multi-engine, and I got B-24 transition at Fort Worth, Texas, and that was about 2 months of training, and then they shipped from there to Davis-Monthan, where I crewed up, and we had roughly 2 months there, 2 months at El Paso, 2 months at in Colorado.
Colorado's fine.
Colorado, okay.
That's fine. That's
right.
fine. That's not a problem. During this training, what was it? Was there some classroom work, or was it mostly flying, or what was in the training?
There was classroom work. There was navigation. There was instruments. There was bombing. There was gunnery. We had the works. We had gunnery ranges that we would train our gunners on, and as we flew over there, and we had to drop bombs which would train our bombardiers, and pilots even had to be proficient on the Norton as well, the Norton bomb sight.
So you had to be able to do a little bit of everything.
That's right, although I was never required to do it, just fly.
During the training, I've read in different books that there were quite a few accidents and close calls during training. Did you ever experience any close calls or near accidents?
No, everything went just fine. I was scared to death one day we were coming in over the mountains, and we hit downdrafts. and applied all the coal that I could to it, still going down, and looked like I was going to be in trouble, but we finally pulled out of it.
So what is a downdraft? What happens with a downdraft?
But you run into those sometimes over the mountains, and it just pulls, just bottom drops out. And
So do you pull up and give her some gas? Is that the idea?
you gave it all the coal it had.
One historian I read said that flying the B-24 was like driving a Mack truck. How do you feel about that statement?
I think it's entirely wrong.
Entirely wrong. All right, why?
That was a very responsive airplane. It would do whatever you made it do. And you had to fly it, but it was an excellent airplane for formation. It was a good airplane for bombing up to roughly 24,000. And it was just a very fine airplane. You could rudder it on formation, keep the platform flat, and you could get as close in as you wanted to get without endangering others.
So it's precise. Is that what you're saying? Precise.
Very precise.
Did you have a chance to fly any other aircraft like the B-17, and could you compare it in terms of flying with the B-17 or any of the other multi-engine aircraft?
After I finished my combat, I came back and was in instrument school at Bryan, Texas, and we were flying T-6s as most of our instrument training, and we had to have 1 hour in 4-engine, and it happened to be a B-17. I put both feet on one of those rudders, trying to turn that airplane. I couldn't budge it. It was a nailer-on airplane, and it was a lot different than flying the B-24.
So you're talking about pushing the pedals with your feet to turn the things. How did that work? You would push the pedal to.
It didn't work on the 17, but on the 24, you can just work it in as you want.
All right. Could you walk me through, or talk me through, rather, your pre-flight checklist? What happened as you're getting ready to fire up the engines and get ready for a flight? Do you have any recollection of that?
Well, certainly you checked your pitot tube, be sure the cover was off from it. You checked your landing gear. You checked all of the entries into or out of the airplane. Checked the gas atop, and of course then when you got inside, there were other things you had to do, instruments,
Sure.
flight controls, and all of that.
And then what was the order of engines when you started up the engines? Which engine did you start first?
Number one.
Number one, and work your way across.
Well, work your way across.
Very good. What was the biggest challenge that you had as a pilot? Was there a particular maneuver, flying in formation, or taking off or landing or flak? What was the biggest challenge that you had as a pilot?
I don't think I had any. Once I got adjusted to flying it, there was no challenge. It was just like getting in a car and driving. Very good airplane.
In terms of flying in formation, what was the toughest position in a formation to fly?
Flying the sea flight that we had when we flew combat, we had 3 6-ship boxes, and flying that low box was the most difficult. The low box would be on the left with the lead in the A flight, and B flight would be up here, C flight down here, and we staggered that so it would give us more firepower to the side, to the either side and to the front and to the back. We were, that was why we staggered it that way.
Right, to concentrate your machine gun firepower against
True.
enemy aircraft.
Yes.
Aircraft. So what was so tough about flying in formation and sea flight?
Well, it was difficult to stay in position, more difficult than it would be up above. I don't know why that was so, but it was.
Okay, okay. Let's say you're flying and you either get, I don't know, maybe some flak damage on an engine, or the engine just conks out, or maybe a little enemy machine gun fire. What happened when your engine malfunctioned? How did you handle that?
You feathered your engine, feathered the prop,
And what
shut
did
it
that?
down.
So what does it mean to feather it? What did that do?
Well, it turns the prop so that it cuts the air, and there's no drag on it, on the aircraft. And then you have to apply power on the other three engines.
And if you're down one engine, are you able to keep in formation, or do you fall out of formation? Or
You're
does it
going to
depend?
fall out of formation unless the lead cuts back. I had that happen on one mission, my third mission. I lost a supercharger, and I could stay behind and up with them, or I could stay up with them but then down low. And neither place was a very good place to be. Not when you're going in where enemy aircraft would be. And we had to abort, go back to base.
So that was before the bombing run.
Yes, we were over Sardinia. Our target was the Foggia aerodromes on that particular mission. And when they turned to go in over Sardinia, I aborted and went back to base.
Yeah, I guess that was the logical thing to do, because you couldn't keep up, and that was before the bomb run, so there just wasn't.
You sure didn't want to go into where enemy aircraft's going to be. You'd been a sitting duck.
Speaking of, when you were flying your missions, was the biggest problem enemy flak or enemy aircraft, or a little bit of both?
Early on, it was flak, weather, and fighters, and then it became fighters, flak, and weather, and it pretty much remained that then through all my career over there.
And when were you flying, or when did you fly your missions, roughly?
I started flying combat out of Benghazi, Libya, in about August of '43, and I had 26 missions without fighter escort, flying across the Mediterranean.
And then
We moved from Benghazi to Tunis and flew a couple of months there, and then moved into Italy, San Procaccio, Thanksgiving of '43.
all right. That was a period of time when fighters would have been a problem.
Yeah.
Some of the guys who were flying later on, and say 44, 45, the fighters had been pulled back to Germany. Hermann Goering had pulled the fighters back to Germany, so flak was the big problem. Which model B-24 were you flying? Or was it the one with the...
I flew a C, I flew a D, I flew an E.
So you flew the earlier or you flew some of the earlier models though with the single 50 caliber machine gun in the nose, as opposed to the nose turret. Did you?
I had one or two missions in that airplane.
Was that flying in the model with just the single 50 caliber machine gun? Was that frightening if a German aircraft came in directly in front of you? Came directly at you?
Well, we didn't have any occasion for that, but then it would have been a problem.
Terms of your being a pilot, what was your most frightening moment? Can you recall the most?
One of one of the most frightening moments was when I first encountered flak over Wiener Neustadt. And it was probably my fourth or fifth mission. And this stuff was coming by, and rump, it cuts the air just like it was a football going by. And we got scared, and I looked over and I saw my co-pilot trying to pull his helmet down over his head, and my engineer was down between the seats and hugging the control, and I started laughing. Through it, I got back in the cockpit, got my head in gear, and we got back in formation. Came on through it. After that, it didn't bother so much.
Well, I've heard descriptions that you'd get to your IP and start in on the bomb run and start in on running into the target, and you turn controls over to the bombardier for the most part, and the autopilot, right?
If you're in the lead, the bombardier has control, yeah.
So your bombardier's, kind of flying the airplane, basically, flying the airplane, or
He's guiding you. You have a PDI. The pilot has a PDI, which tells you want to go left or right, and the bombardier controls that PDI and keeps you on target.
And you're trying to keep the speed steady, and
the pilot must keep the speed steady and on course.
And then when you're flying into the target, I've heard that you could see the flak boxes, the boxes of flak, coming as you're flying into the target. You could see the flak boxes off in the distance, getting closer and closer.
My 49th mission, I flew into a black cloud of flak. It was just black as pitch, and yes, you can really you really see it.
Did you ever? Just about every plane was damaged by flak, but were you ever? Was your aircraft ever? Your ship ever severely damaged by flak?
No.
But you did go home with a lot of holes, and frequently, I would imagine.
On that 49th mission, I had a hole about the size of a dinner plate beside my leg, and I got a hit in the leg, and the flak knocked out all of our communication.
But were you able to maintain airspeed and stay with your formation that time?
Formation had to stay with us. We were in the lead.
Well, that's convenient. That's convenient.
But it blew us out of formation, and our wingman didn't want to come back in on us. They finally did when they found out we were under control, and we brought everybody home. We had to throttle back. One man had lost an engine. We had to throttle back to bring him home.
Was throttling back like that? Was that something that was done often? Was it done often to have the whole formation throttle back so that the straggler could keep up? Or did it
Well,
depend?
it depended on the situation. You couldn't do that going into target.
No, definitely not.
You had, if it was on the way home, then it would be perfectly right to do so. You took care of your people, your crews.
That's right. That's a very good point. From when you were a pilot, can you look back to your training? And obviously, when you're in training, you can't really simulate real combat, flak exploding around your airplane and fighters. But do you think your training was good to become a pilot?
Certainly. We went through primary training, and they were eliminating pilots left and right, worried about being eliminated. Basic was a little more, they weren't eliminating them nearly as fast. And advanced, we had twin engine in advance, and they were going to graduate all of us at that point. They had gotten rid of those that couldn't make the grade.
Yes, sir. Um, what were two or three of the toughest targets that you hit, and why?
There's one that I would like to talk about. It was Anzio. And the reason I want to talk about it is because that's the one that the group received a citation on. We were on the verge of losing Anzio, and they called the heavies in for the first time. And Colonel Graff was in the lead aircraft with me, and we had bad weather, and we were the only group to keep going. We kept dropping down. We finally got down to around 14,000 feet, and we put it in a circle out in the water off from Anzio. We made the decision to go ahead and go in, and our target was roughly at 8,000 feet, so that meant we were pretty low over the target.
And what was your target?
The target was ammunition storage, and we were briefed to stay away from the railroad track. There was a railroad track that led us right to the target, and being that low, I called the navigator and told him to take us right down that railroad track. And we got peppered, but good, with small arms fire. But we kept going, and we got our target and got out of there, and we didn't have one casualty, not on that flight. And I think it was the surprise of the strike that got us in, got us out, and that was very low. We were very fortunate.
And that attack on Anzio, that was to support the infantry working its way up Italy.
The one reason that I wanted to make that flight and bomb that, the 45th Infantry Division was down there on Anzio. Had a lot of friends down there.
And this was when you were a guardsman. That's
when I was a guardsman.
That's your old guards outfit.
Yeah, I got out as they were going overseas, and so I was able to help them as well as help the war.
Well, that's very important. Help the ground pounders. That's a good thing for a flyboy to want to help the ground pounders. Sometimes the ground pounders, wonder where you guys are. So that's a good thing. So Anzio was an important target for you. What about Wiener Neustadt or some of the others? What were some of the other tough targets?
Wiener Neustadt was a real hot target, and that's where I first got into the lead. I was leading the high flight, B flight, and our lead aborted for some reason or other, and the number 2 guy was to take over the lead, and we couldn't keep up with him. I don't know what happened. He just took off. So, I tried throwing the coal to it to keep up, but I was losing my aircraft. So I finally decided, can't do that. And I throttled back. First thing I knew, I had the whole group on me. And I told the bombardier, it's your show. He said, Roger, bomb door's coming open. And just moments later, the bombs away, we got our target. Well, we put it in a right turn. We were supposed to put a right descending turn. But there were 17s, there was all kind of aircraft there bombing that target. And I could see fighters swarming those 17s below us. So we made a level turn off target and held our altitude. And the fighters didn't bother us any. We saw one B-117 ahead of us go down. 109 made a sweep across the back of him, and you could see all 4 engines starting to smoke. they got the Messerschmitt up here as he was trying to get away. They got him. The airplane just pulled up and went straight in. But that was hot target, always hot target.
Sure, sure. You mentioned back at the Anzio mission, the mission to hit Anzio. You mentioned that Colonel Graff was flying with you, I believe.
I always had a colonel with me, nearly always. He was the formation commander. He would ride the co-pilot seat, and I was the flight commander.
So, did you get to know these commanding officers at all? What can you tell me some stories about them? Were they good leaders? What were their personalities like?
The two that flew with me was that I really respected and liked was Colonel Graff and Colonel Fellows, Richard Fellows. Very good men. And would have gone anywhere with them. They were good.
So, can you relate a story or an anecdote that tells about their personalities, or can you think of something like that?
Colonel Graff always called me son. And one time we were in the bar, and we were having a drink. He said, "How old do you think I am?" And it was a misjudgment. And I said, "Oh, are you about 50?" And I thought he was going to fall off the bar stool. I shouldn't have done that. But
So, how old was he?
I don't really know, but he wasn't that old.
And you were what? You were
24.
24 at the time.
I may have been 23 at that point.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you were what? A first lieutenant then? Second lieutenant? Captain?
I was probably a first lieutenant.
First lieutenant. So,
Yeah.
First lieutenant telling a colonel at 50. Well, but it's interesting that you were at the bar at the officers' club, I assume, having a drink with your commanding officer. I think that's one of the things that strikes me about the Army Air Force, or the Army Air Corps perhaps at that time, the camaraderie and the sort of interaction between the officers and the enlisted and the high-ranking officers and the lower-ranking officers. You had a lot of camaraderie. You had a lot of sort of informal friendships there that you might not have had in the Army, for example.
Well, being enlisted, I started out at $21 a month, and finally got up to be a sergeant before I got into aviation cadets. And that made me understand my enlisted people very much, and understood what they were going through and what I needed to do to support them. And it helped an awful lot.
Well, yes. I've never served in the military myself, but I understand some of the best officers had been enlisted earlier in their careers. Because you're right, they do know what it is. The other thing you know is you learn to pay attention to your sergeant, because your sergeant knows, right?
I trusted my engineer explicitly, and he was an excellent man. He was a bit older.
The other thing that I find very interesting, having talked with your fellow veterans in this 376 bomb group and reading about other flight crews and so on, is the sense of family. It's really a family, or the cohesion or the camaraderie that you had with your flight crew. You guys must have been very close.
Yes, that's one of the nicest things I like about coming to these reunions, is because we've all had to go through this, and we all know what we went through, what we sacrificed, and we have a camaraderie that just won't quit. It's something that we just love to get together and visit.
Well, it's a common experience that the rest of the world doesn't have.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's very important. In terms of when you weren't flying, which we're flying a lot, I've seen some of the flight logs or whatever, the schedules, and sometimes you might be flying 3 or 4 days straight. But when you weren't flying, what did you do for fun or for recreation? Or
There wasn't any fun. If we weren't flying, we were training. We were going through navigation or talking about the aircraft. There wasn't any time for play, very little. There was some shows that we had theaters a theater. It was very, well, it was open theater, but we could go to the shows at night and things like that. And church, we had church.
Sure, sure. Speaking of church and those kind of issues, how did you get through? Was it just guts? Was it religious faith? How did you get through the tough times, if I may ask? It's kind of a tough question, but
God was always in my cockpit, and I felt that my mother was there also. She passed away when I was 19, and I felt I was very well protected from the two of them.
Very good.
On that 49th mission that I mentioned, I had asked the bombardier to salvo. He had missed his target, and we had lost 5 aircraft before we got into that target. And he wanted another run, but I said, it's too hot and we don't have enough strength, salvo. And I was waiting for the salvo for the lights to flash, and I thought, this is too hot for me. And I started turning, and I think that was God telling me, make that turn. And just as I started turning is when I had that blast that cut the hole in the side of the plane. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see 3 more bursts. If I'd have stayed on that same trajectory, I wouldn't be here today.
That's compelling. It's definitely compelling. When did you fly your last mission? Or roughly, when did you finish flying?
Oh, it was probably June of 44.
June of 44. So just about the same time as the invasion of Normandy and also the capture of Rome, too.
Yes, we were. I was over there a year, right at a year.
So you actually were over there flying combat missions a little bit longer than some of your comrades who could be over there if they flew the right number of missions from the right place, maybe 4 months.
Yes, well, in I think it was early 44, we had a Vincenza raid. 18 aircraft went out. Colonel Graf took them out, and they were to rendezvous with the 98th bomb group. But it was bad weather. And when they got to the rendezvous, it was a little late. Colonel Graf thought that the 98th should be out ahead of him. And so they decided to proceed on to target. And actually, the 98th had turned around and gone home. The group went out and hit Vincenza, and coming back down the Adriatic, they had Ju-88 sitting back of them, lobbing 88 millimeter into the formation. 3 of them got back. The rest of them went down. My squadron on that mission was stand down for training. So they broke up my squadron. I was a squadron ops at the time. They broke up my squadron and put all of the experienced guys, scattered them in the other three squadrons. And we went on a training. We were off combat, couldn't fly combat, didn't have enough people qualified. So we shipped in new crews and went into training mode. And we finally got back to where we were able to conduct combat. And at this point, they moved me up to as group ops. And my mission then was to brief the crews on their targets and send them on their way. As a result, I could only fly when they told me to fly, and that kept me there for about a year.
I see. Well, in terms of training and working within those crews, though, you would have had combat experience, flight experience in combat by then. So I'm sure that you were able to provide good instruction and good, leadership and so on for those newer crews as they were cycled in.
I thought the toughest part of that job was sending them out and counting them when they came back, and counting the losses. That was the toughest part.
I'm sure. A little bit of another question. Did you receive a lot of letters from home, or did you write a lot of letters from home to home?
Sure. Yes.
And to whom did you write?
To my wife. Yeah.
And what? Obviously, you were censored writing back home, but what sort of things did you talk about?
How much I missed her. Yeah, missed the family.
That's great. That's one of the things. It's one of the other things I found is in terms of whether they're soldiers, sailors, Marines, or airmen stationed overseas, they like to get their mail from home, and it's just very important for morale. And when you went back stateside, when you were shipped back stateside, when you finished your mission in, say, June 44, I believe, what happened thereafter? Did you separate from the Air Force?
No, I went to Fort Worth, back to Fort Worth, and was stationed there as an instructor. And I went through B-24 instruction course, and through instrument training. So I became also an instrument examiner. We got in B-32s, and we switched over to B-32s from the B-24, bigger airplane. And then finally the war was over, and I had more points than anybody else, so I was one of the first ones to get out.
Excellent. So you were able to provide quality instruction, though. Do you think that you were able to provide as good, if not better, instruction to those pilots or cadets in Texas than what you had had when you went through earlier on in the war?
No, I always felt I was the best.
Well, that's something that pilots have. You've got to have self-confidence. You've just got to. You're flying an airplane. You got 10 people under your care, and you got to have self-confidence. You got to have something going on there because you can't hesitate, right?
No, you got to be able to tell others how to fly too.
Definitely. And were you surprised when World War II ended the way it did? For example, when the atomic bombs were dropped, was this a surprise in August?
Certainly, yeah.
Because I know some of the guys from 376 were getting ready to ship out to the Pacific, and some of them were even saying they were getting checked out on B-29s and so on to get shipped out to the Pacific. And then, what did you do after the war?
I went back to the floral business. I was in the floral. I was raised in the floral and nursery business, and I went back to that in Tonkawa, Oklahoma. I worked there. That was with my father. I worked there for a couple of years, and then moved to Flat River, Missouri, where I was working in a larger greenhouse, and I worked there about 2 years and moved then to Grand Junction, Colorado, and I was foreman grower of 80,000 square feet of glass.
Did you take advantage of any of the GI Bill opportunities for housing and the like?
Yes, I did. I used the GI Bill in studying growing and greenhouse management,
Very good.
and I also used it for buying a home.
Well, we're coming down to the last couple of questions here, and this is one of the questions I ask everybody, all veterans, whether they were airmen like yourself, or soldiers, or sailors, or Marines, veterans of World War II, and you know, it is, I think, an important question to ask. And do you consider yourself to be a quote unquote hero for what you did?
No, it was a job to be done, and I did it.
That is the answer. That type of an answer is what all of your fellow veterans say, and that, I think it shows your generation's remarkable humility. And it's
I got out of the service in 45, and I was recalled for Korea, and got into C-119 flying. Went to Korea. We flew all over the Far East, even got into Vietnam. So I've had combat in all three theaters.
Were you in the reserves then, or did they just
I
recall
was a
you?
regular officer. Became a regular officer.
Oh, all right. Wow. So you're a 3-war veteran. So did you get to fly those newfangled jet engines ever?
Finally got into the T-33, a single-engine jet trainer, and it was a wonderful airplane. I was stationed at Tinker Air Force Base and in training, and my job was to establish training requirements for control tower, GCA, approach control, and maintenance. And I had established those requirements every year. So, and I could go to any base and conduct business and get my flying in at the same time. So I did get a lot of flying in the T-33.
Yeah, as I guess the come a long way from the powerful but lumbering B-24 to the T-33.
There were times I was making 600 miles an hour with tailwind.
That's right, and you have very, very maneuverable, very responsible, or responsive. To put the coal to that one.
It was a wonderful little airplane.
Lots of fun, lots of fun. But did you have 1 or 2 engines in it?
One.
Just one engine. Well,
engine.
There's something to be said to have more than one engine. All right. In closing, is there anything you'd like to add, or anything that jumps into your mind that I haven't talked about or haven't asked? Or
No, I had a wonderful career, and would like to do it all over again if we could.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, sir, for your time, and I really appreciate your help here today.
Thank you. Thank you.